Welcome to the Ramayana, Stories of Dharm and Devotion. I'm Sandeep, your storyteller, guiding you through the eternal journey of Valmiki's Ramayana. Our narrative draws deeply from Valmiki's original text and is enriched with stories from other Indian traditions, offering you a complete and immersive experience of this eternal tale. In our previous episode, the winds shifted and the shores of destiny stirred. Vibhishan, once a prince of Lanka, chose truth over loyalty, dharm over fear. Cast out by his own brother, mocked by a court drunk on pride, he soared across the ocean and stood before Ram, not to plead for shelter, but to offer his unwavering allegiance. What followed was a masterclass in leadership, where Ram, with clarity and compassion, welcomed the one who had walked away from adharm. Trust was tested, courage was revealed, and a new alliance was born under the rising sun. In today's episode, we return to the ocean's edge, where Ram sits in deep prayer, asking the sea to grant safe passage for his army. But as the hours stretch into days and silence is all that answers, the stillness stirs something fierce within him. For the first time, we glimpse the full force of Ram's anger, not born from pride, but from purpose. His wrath is not for conquest. It is for denied dharm, for time wasted when justice waits across the waves. What follows is a moment both divine and profound, when the ocean itself, an ancient witness to time and truth, rises to speak. In this rare meeting between God and nature, we learn that even the wildest forces bend not to fury, but to wisdom. And as the ocean reveals its secret, the path to Lanka finally begins to emerge, not with thunder or blood, but with insight and surrender. Join me now as we witness Ram's divine fury and the ocean's humble request, a dialogue that teaches us the balance between might and restraint. For in the silence before the storm, the greatest lessons are often whispered by the waves.
After Shuk was released, the Vanar camp slowly returned to motion. The morning sun rose higher, casting a golden arc across the restless ocean. The war had not begun, yet its breath could already be felt in the saltless wind. Ram sat silently for a moment, his gaze fixed on the distant waves. Then he turned and called for counsel. Vibhishan arrived first, still regal despite his exile. Behind him came Sugriv, his brow tense. Hanuman followed, ever steady, and Jambavan leaned in with ancient wisdom. Lakshman stood close to Ram, silent but sharp-eyed. Tara, too, stepped forward, graceful yet resolute, her gaze alert as always. Ram spoke. Now that we know the strength of our enemy and have vowed to restore dharm, we must decide, how do we cross this ocean? The time for preparation is over. We must act. Vibhishan bowed slightly. O Ram, when I first joined your cause, I suggested we seek the ocean's grace. Your ancestor Sagar gave it its name. It carries your legacy in its very waves. Perhaps it will honor that memory. Ram nodded slowly. True. And yet, is there a swifter way? Is it wise to wait when every moment Sita suffers in the golden prison of Lanka? Before anyone could respond, Lakshman stepped forward, his voice laced with urgency. Brother, he said, this ocean is a body of nature. It does not speak. It does not feel. Why delay for the sake of formality? Time is not our ally. You should unleash your arrows. Let us pierce the ocean's heart with your divine weapons. Let the sea feel our resolve. Only then will it surrender a path. Sugriv, usually the voice of caution, surprised the group by agreeing. He said, our army is vast. We cannot wait endlessly while Ravan fortifies his walls. Let the ocean know we are not here to plead, but to march. Even a river changes its course when faced with thunder. There was a brief pause. Then Tara stepped forward, her expression thoughtful but firm. No, she said softly. Let us not abandon grace before giving it a chance. True power lies in restraint. First, we must ask. First, we must give the sea a chance to do what is right. If it remains still, if it mocks our patience, then, and only then shall it witness the wrath of Ram. Ram looked at her. His gaze lingered, not in doubt, but in reflection. Tara's words, though gentle, echoed a deeper truth. Ram turned to his brother and spoke with calm resolve. He said, Lakshman, I understand your concern, and I do not doubt your fire. But Tara speaks the path of dharm. We must begin with humility, not fury. To ask first, and strike only if ignored, that is the way of righteousness. He then looked out toward the ocean and added thoughtfully, and if the sea grants us a path, it will be one shaped not by force, but by grace. It will be firm, it will be stable, and it will serve us not just in crossing, but in returning, in moving supplies, in guiding reinforcements should this war stretch longer than we hope. The Vanars listened intently as Ram continued, to fight a war is one thing, but to sustain it, to feed your army, to transport the wounded, to carry messages across is the true challenge of victory. A path given by the ocean will be the lifeline of our mission. Even Sugriv was struck by the clarity of thought. This was not just a warrior speaking. This was a leader, a strategist, a king who saw far beyond the battlefield. And in that moment, all present witnessed a quiet masterclass in warcraft and supply, where compassion shaped action, and foresight laid the first stone across the sea. He turned back to the council. Let me invoke the ocean, not as a warrior demanding surrender, but as a son of Sagar asking for passage. If the sea answers, we move with its blessing. If not, then let it bear witness to the fury of one who fights for justice. The others bowed their heads in agreement. And so, Ram walked toward the shore. The wind stirred, carrying the scent of salt and silence. The waves danced at his feet, unaware, or perhaps aware, of the power that approached them. There, Ram laid down kusha grass, drawing a sacred circle in the sand. He sat cross-legged, his bow resting beside him, and closed his eyes. No anger, no demand, just stillness. The prince turned sage, a warrior turned seeker. With folded hands and a heart heavy with duty, Ram began to pray, not to conquer the ocean, but to awaken its conscience. And as the waves rolled on, somewhere deep within their ancient rhythm, a presence stirred. The silence before the storm had begun. 3 days passed. 3 sunrises and sunsets came and went, bathing the ocean in golden light, silver mist, and dark storm clouds. But the sea remained unchanged. Ram sat still, unmoved by hunger or thirst. His eyes closed, his posture steady, his heart echoing only one prayer, to the ocean to grant a path. He did not ask for miracles, only for the dharmic balance to be preserved, only for cooperation in a war where truth had been torn and justice drowned. But the ocean did not respond. Its waves kept crashing, indifferent. Not calmer, not angrier, just silent. The Vanars began to whisper. Some wondered if the ocean even heard. Others feared Ram's patience would not last. On the 4th day, as the first rays of dawn touched the earth, something shifted. Ram opened his eyes, and the calm within them was gone. A flicker of fire had entered his gaze. Not rage, but pain. Not fury, but sorrow. A deep ache stirred by Sita's long captivity, by the arrogance of Ravan, by the unyielding silence of nature itself. He rose. The camp fell silent. Even the ocean's breeze seemed to hold its breath. Ram spoke, his voice low but charged with divine force. He said, I have prayed. I waited. I have honored restraint as dharm commands. But when righteousness is met with silence, even patience becomes adharm. He turned to Lakshman, his tone now sharper. He said, Bring me my bow. Bring me my arrows. If the ocean will not respond to my plea, it shall now feel the heat of my pain. Without hesitation, Lakshman stepped forward, his eyes wide but resolute. He placed the great Kodanda bow in Ram's hands, along with his quiver of celestial arrows. The moment Ram's fingers wrapped around the bowstring, The air itself trembled. He looked toward the horizon, at the great blue expanse that had ignored his grace, and said, "Let me not destroy. Let me only awaken." He drew a handful of arrows, sharp and fast, but not yet deadly. With the force of a god, he shot them one by one. The sky split with their thunder. Each arrow struck the ocean, causing massive whirlpools, waves that rose like walls, and winds that spun like storms. The very rhythm of the sea faltered. Water rose, receded, and surged again. But still, the ocean did not speak. Ram's hands trembled. His brow furrowed. And then, the fire within him surged. "No more," he whispered. He reached into his quiver and drew a blazing weapon, one that pulsed with divine light. The Agnyastra. Born from the heart of Lord Agni himself, this weapon was made to consume anything, everything. Its flames did not burn wood or cloth. They scorched arrogance, shattered injustice, dried up rivers and oceans alike. Ram raised it high. The heavens darkened. Thunder rolled across the sky, though no clouds had formed. The animals in the jungle fled. Birds screamed as they flew away. Even the Vanars fell back, their eyes wide with awe and fear. The tip of the Agnyastra glowed red, then gold, then white, hotter than the sun. It crackled with fire that could turn oceans into deserts. But just as Ram was about to release it, a tremor ran through the earth. The sea roared, not in anger, but in alarm. And then a great surge of light emerged from the water. Not a wave, not a storm, but a man, old, glowing, robed in saffron, with calm eyes and a gentle smile. He stepped onto the sand barefoot, his hands joined in respectful greeting. It was Varun, the lord of the oceans. He had taken the form of a Brahman, wise, humble, eternal. Ram lowered his bow, but did not unstring it. Varun spoke gently, his voice like a ripple across still water. He said, "O Ram, son of Dashrath, jewel of the Ikshvaku line, please forgive my silence. I did not ignore your prayers, I tested your resolve. For it is the nature of oceans to remain still under pressure, but to rise in respect before true strength." Ram did not speak. Varun continued, "It is also the command of God Brahma that I remain bound to my nature. I flow, I surge, I pull and push, but I do not part. If I parted for every king and conqueror who asked, there would be no balance left in the world. Mountains would shift, rivers would vanish, the law of nature would crumble." He stepped closer, folding his hands. He continued, "But you, O Ram, are not just a king. You are the ideal of dharm, of restraint and justice. Your anger is righteous, not selfish. Your fury is rooted in compassion. And so, I have come." He bowed and said, "Withdraw your Agnyastra, O Ram. Spare my creatures, the fishes, the turtles, the serpents, the gods who dwell in my waters. Let them not burn for my delay. Let them live, for they too are bound by laws older than war." Ram's gaze softened. The wind stilled once more. Ram looked into the eyes of the ocean god. He saw no malice there, only duty. The fire in his hands still burned, the Agnyastra glowing with divine intensity. But Ram's heart had softened, not with weakness, but with wisdom. He nodded slowly. "O Varun," he said, "I understand your nature. I forgive your silence. But this weapon, once invoked, cannot return unused. It must be released, or it will consume everything around me. Tell me, then, where shall it go? Where will it serve dharm, not destroy it blindly?" Varun bowed his head, thoughtful. Then he spoke, his voice calm and grave. He said, "Toward my northern side, O Ram, there is a holy region, once pure, now defiled. It is known as Dhrimatulya, revered in name, but disgraced by those who dwell there now. Fearsome men, robbers, sinful warriors led by the Abhiras, draw from my waters with cruel intent. They pollute what is sacred. They misuse what is meant to nourish life." He looked up at Ram and said, "They do not honor dharm. Their hearts are steeped in violence, their hands stained with blood. I can no longer bear their touch. Let this Agnyastra be used there. Let its fire purify. Let it cleanse. Let it restore balance." Ram gave a solemn nod. He turned toward the northern horizon. He raised the Agnyastra high once more, and this time it was not with fury, but purpose. "Let fire descend," he whispered, "not to destroy, but to awaken." He loosened the weapon. The sky roared. A golden streak cut through the air, a thunderbolt of fire and light. It tore through clouds, soared above forests, and then descended upon the land of Dhrimatulya. The earth trembled. A great blast rang out that was louder than thunder, deeper than the roar of mountains. The very crust of the earth split open. From the cleft gushed forth water from the subterranean world, mixing with the fire, hissing, steaming, then settling. What remained was a vast hollow, dry and wide. The waters that once fed the land were gone, scorched away by the fire of dharm. That hollow, that scorched land, came to be known as Maru, the desert of purification. But Ram's act did not leave it barren. He stepped forward and raised his hand. "I grant this land a boon," he said. "Let it not be cursed by fire, but be blessed by purpose. Let its sands feed the cattle. Let its wine carry healing. Let fruits and roots grow with sweetness. Let it be light in disease and rich in bounty." And so it was. The Maru Desert, today known as the Thar Desert of India, became a sacred land. Its soil kissed by the fire of Ram, its fate turned from ruin to resilience. A place of cattle, herbs, and strength. A land that bore witness to the power of dharm, even in fire. Varun looked at Ram, his gaze filled not with fear, but with reverence. "O Ram," he said, his voice deep as the ocean depths, "even in anger, your heart holds nobility. Even in punishment, you uphold justice. You did not destroy in arrogance, you purified with compassion. You did not seek vengeance, you sought balance." He folded his hands again in humility and said, "The power you hold is divine and beyond measure. I now understand this Agnyastra was not for my ruin, but for the cleansing of adharm. What a blessing it is to have been tested and transformed by your grace." Then Varun paused, his expression growing earnest. He continued, "O Ram, the truth is this. If I dry up now and make way for your army, it will not be because of my own will or power, it will be because of your command. And then, my dignity as the keeper of nature's law would be lost." He looked down, humbled by his own limits, and continued, "However, I know that the command of the Lord is supreme, it cannot be violated. Whatever you desire, O Ram, that shall be done at once." Ram, holding his bow lowered, but still in hand, stepped forward. His voice was calm, yet resolute. He said, "O Varun, I did not wish to dishonor you. I do not seek to bend the laws of nature to my will. I am no conqueror, I am a servant of dharm. But Sita waits, and this work cannot be delayed. I must cross, not for my pride, but for justice, for a promise." He folded his palms and asked, "So tell me, what is the righteous path? What way can you show us that honors both the laws of nature and the urgency of our mission?" Varun bowed deeply. Then, with quiet strength, he answered, "O Ram, I shall show you the way." Varun looked toward the Vanar Sena spread across the shore, the army of fur and fire, valor and loyalty. His eyes searched and then settled onto figures standing side by side, tall, sturdy, radiant with divine energy even amidst their simplicity. He turned to Ram and said, "O noble one, your army already holds the solution within itself. Among these brave Vanars stand two who are destined for this task, Nal and Neel." Ram's gaze followed Varun's. Sugriv stepped forward and nodded, recognizing the two warriors. "Yes, they're among my best. But why them, O Varun?" Varun smiled and said, "Nal is the son of Vishwakarma, the celestial architect of the gods. In his veins flows the wisdom of design, of balance, of sacred geometry. He has not only strength, but the hands of creation. His lineage alone marks him as worthy. The Vanars turned toward Nal, who humbly bowed his head. His large frame stood tall, but his eyes were downcast with reverence. And Neel, continued Varun, is the son of Agni, the god of fire. He holds within him a force that no wind can extinguish. Together, these two do not just fight, they build, they preserve, they channel divine energy into form. Ram looked at the two, curious and quiet. But Varun was not finished. There is more to their story, he said. In their childhood, Nal and Neel lived with sages in the forests. They were mischievous and playful as children, but always testing boundaries. The Vanars chuckled lightly. Nal and Neel glanced at each other, smiling faintly. Varun went on, they would sneak into the ashrams during worship and take the small idols of the beloved deities and toss them playfully into the river. The sages, at first, forgave them out of love. But their antics became too frequent. The sages, disturbed in their penance, one day gathered and spoke a curse. Or so it seemed. A horse fell across the camp. He continued, the sages declared that from now on, whatever object these two touches shall never sink in water, be it stone or metal, wood or clay. If touched by Nal and Neel, it shall float. Ram's eyes widened, not in disbelief, but in awe. Varun continued, what began as mischief became a miracle. And now, that blessing, given in disguise of a curse, will serve your cause, O Ram. For who is better to construct a bridge across my vast waters than these two, whose touch can defy the sea? There was a murmur of agreement among the Vanars. Hanuman looked at Nal and Neel with renewed admiration. Angad clapped them both on the back, saying, your hands shall now carry the path to Lanka. Ram smiled, finally setting down his bow. His heart, though still heavy with thoughts of Sita, felt a wave of relief. Let us build, then, he said, with strength, with faith, and with the blessings of nature and the gods alike. Sita waits, not for vengeance, but for her dharm to be restored. Nal and Neel stepped forward, touching Ram's feet. We are yours, Prabhu. Command us, and the ocean shall become a road beneath your feet. Thus, from divine mischief rose divine purpose. The bridge to Lanka would not be built by celestial tools or storms of war, but by the cursed hands of two playful children whose destiny had always been to serve in the greatest story ever told. The sun now stood proud in the sky, casting a golden sheen upon the restless ocean. The winds had calmed. The air felt charged with purpose. Ram turned to Nal and Neel and said, please begin. Let every stone you place carry the strength of our devotion, the weight of our resolve, and the blessing of dharm. With hands folded, Nal and Neel bowed to Ram, to Sugriv, and then turned toward the sea. A conch blew, long and deep, echoing across the shore, calling the Vanar Sena to action. The first stone was lifted, massive and round, heavy as a mountain. But as Nal placed his hand upon it, a strange light shimmered across its surface. Neel took hold of the other side. The two walked toward the edge of the sea and, with steady breath, placed the stone upon the water. And it floated. Gasps rippled through the Vanar ranks. Even Sugriv and Angad stared in disbelief. But Ram remained calm, watching with deep eyes. Let every act of faith, he whispered, be rewarded. Stone after stone followed. From across the forests and hills, Vanars carried rocks, some small, some the size of elephants. Some pulled tree trunks, others rolled boulders. Hanuman himself uprooted cliffs from mountain tops and brought them on his shoulders. The Vanars chanted Jai Shri Ram. As they labored, each chant giving them strength. Nal and Neel led the engineering, placing the foundation stones in rows, pressing each firmly into the rising path. They worked with precision, marking directions, angels, distances. They used trees to create scaffolding, vines to fasten joints. They filled gaps with smaller pebbles and sealed joints with packed mud and coral. The sea, which once roared, now seemed to part respectfully before their efforts. Every time a rock touched Null or Neil's hands, it floated, unmoved by the waves. Some of the stones had Ram's name lovingly inscribed on them by devout Vanars, not merely out of reverence, but because those stones, marked with his name, acted like a divine binding force. They held the entire structure together, keeping rock upon rock joined in unity. Just as Ram brought together hearts, clans, and kingdoms, his name now held the bridge itself, firm, unshaken, and one. And it did. The bridge began to grow like a serpentine ribbon of stone stretching into the ocean, mile by mile, like an arrow shot toward destiny. Birds circled above it. Dolphins and turtles swam below it. The ocean, once stubborn and still, now hummed softly as if singing its approval. The construction took 5 days, 5 days of divine sweat and sacred labor. On the 6th morning, the Vanars looked out across the sea. The bridge was complete, a stone path from the shore of India to the gates of Lanka, a marvel of courage, a monument of devotion. Ram stood at the edge of the shore, gazing upon the path his army had built, not with machines, but with their hearts, their backs, their belief. A silent moment passed. The salty breeze swept his hair. The stones under his feet held firm. But Ram's gaze did not rest on the bridge. It rose upward toward the sky, toward the unseen forces that had carried them thus far. He whispered, more to himself than anyone else, "This is not our doing alone. None of this bridge, this unity, this unshakable courage could have happened without the grace of Mahadev, Lord Shiv, the benevolent one, the timeless witness of all yugs." Ram's voice gained strength. We must worship him here, now, on this sacred shore. Sugriv heard these words and bowed low. Without hesitation, he summoned his swiftest Vanars. "Go," he ordered, "bring forth the most noble sages, the learned rishis, the Brahmins who know the ways of worship. Let this moment be marked forever by devotion." Messengers dashed into the forests and across nearby hermitages. Before long, sages with matted hair and glowing faces arrived, carrying holy vessels, sacred firewood, and texts of ancient chants. Ram, with deep reverence, gathered white sand and sat facing east. With his own hands, he shaped a mound upon which the linga would rest. And there, upon that very shore where ocean met earth, he established a Shivlinga, pure and radiant. The air shimmered with incense. The chants of Vedic hymns rose like waves. Flowers were offered. Ghee fed the sacred flames. The Vanar Sena stood silent, hands folded, witnessing a moment that would echo through eternity. And then Ram spoke, his voice filled with devotion. He said, "There is no one dearer to me than Lord Shiv. He is the destroyer of ego, the protector of seekers, the embodiment of renunciation and power. He who chants his name even once, with faith, earns the blessings of all the gods. Let this place be blessed. Let all who come here remember that before the war for dharm, there was surrender, not to fear, but to Shiv, the all-knowing, all-giving." The sages blessed Ram. The flames flickered high. Thus, the Rameshwaram Shiv Ling was established, a shrine that would stand for times to come. And as the ritual ended, Ram stood once more. The bridge awaited. The battle lay ahead. But his heart was now steady by devotion, by clarity, and by the grace of the Lord of Kailash. Thereafter, the great sages, honored and fulfilled by the rare sight of Ram worshipping Lord Shiv, returned quietly to their ashrams in the forest, their hearts filled with peace. High above, beyond the view of mortals, Lord Shiv and Devi Parvati watched the scene unfold from their abode in Mount Kailash. A gentle smile played upon Shiv's face as he turned to his consort. "O Parvati," he said, his voice filled with quiet wonder, "see how Vishnu, in his human form as Ram, follows the very path he sets for others. Even as the Supreme Being, he bows before me, showing the world that surrender and humility are the greatest ornaments of the divine. Parvati looked at Ram with reverence and love in her eyes. Lord Shiv continued, "This is the nature of Vishnu. He holds dear all those who surrender themselves to him, no matter how small, how flawed, how weak. Look at clever Nal and Neel. They were just Vanas, playful, mischievous. But by Ram's grace, they now shine with glory and will be remembered forever across all the worlds. The stones that once sunk by nature, that once pulled others down with them, have today become like ships, floating, carrying the weight of a bridge across the vast sea." He paused and his eyes were steady. He continued, "This is not the doing of the sea, nor the power of the stones, nor any marvel of trees or winds. This is the might of Ram. This is the strength of his devotion, his dharm, and his name. Just as these stones defeat their very nature by floating, so too will any soul that surrenders to Ram defy its fate and rise towards salvation." Parvati nodded, and her heart moved. Lord Shiv then added softly, "Those who ignore this path, who worship lesser powers with selfish hearts, stray into ignorance. For it is Ram, the embodiment of dharm, truth, and love, who alone lifts even the heaviest burdens with a glance and transforms even stone into salvation." Meanwhile, with Shiv in his thoughts and Sita in his heart, Ram turned to his army, and the march to Lanka began. Ram stood at the edge of the Setu, the great bridge built not with mortar and stone, but with devotion and the blessings of dharm. He turned to his army, his voice calm but commanding. "The time has come," he said. "Let us begin." At once, the entire Vanar Sena stirred. Thousands upon thousands of Vanars, bears, and warriors stepped forward as one, and each of them, in line with the most ancient Indian tradition, placed their right foot forward first, an act reserved for all things pure, righteous, and sacred. For millennia, this has been the way of beginning a noble task. Just as Hanuman, when he entered Lanka in search of Sita, had put his left foot first, for it was a mission into enemy ground, a challenge to adharm. But today was different. Today was a march toward righteousness. Today, dharm was on the move. As the army advanced across the Setu, something extraordinary began to unfold in the depths below. Every creature of the ocean stirred. Fishes of every hue, serpents as long as rivers, turtles older than kingdoms, and crocodiles of staggering size, some hundreds of meters in length, emerged from their hidden places. There were animals who once preyed on each other, predators and prey, beasts of great hunger and terrible strength. But today, they had no hunger. Today, they had no fear. For Varun, the Lord of the oceans, had sent word far and wide. The Lord himself walks this bridge. He walks not on water, but through your hearts. This is your one chance in lifetimes across lifetimes. Look upon him, worship him, attain salvation. And so they came. All of them. Not one moved, not one blinked. They floated with their backs arched, their heads bowed, their eyes wide with joy and wonder. The ocean, once wild and unending, was now a sea of reverence. The creatures became as still as the deepest meditation. It was said that the water itself vanished beneath them, for there were so many who had come to witness the Lord. Even as some Vanars tried to shoo them away to make room, the creatures would not move. But none were annoyed. No one grew impatient. Everyone's heart was strangely filled with peace. A divine joy settled over the entire ocean. The Setu itself was overflowing with Vanars, so many that the bridge seemed too small. Some leapt into the sky, flying across with mighty bounds. Others ran atop the backs of crocodiles and turtles, laughing, shouting, whooping in joy. Ram and Lakshman watched this marvel unfold, and they too laughed. "Look, brother," said Lakshman, "even the ocean bows to dharm when it walks in human form." Ram smiled, his gaze soft. The crossing had begun. And so, the mighty army of Ram, led by Sugriv, Hanuman, Angad, Jambavan, Nal, Neel, and the great bears and vanas of the earth, crossed the ocean. Not just over stones and waves, but over the shoulders of love, the prayers of sages, the strength of nature, and the blessings of the gods. Ram walked at the hem, not just as a king or a warrior, but as the very essence of righteousness moving forward. No poet could count the heads of that army. No painter could capture the grandeur of that moment. For this was not merely a march toward Lanka, it was a march of destiny, a march of dharm to conquer adharm. And ahead of them, across the fading horizon, lay the golden fortress of Ravan was waiting.
In this episode, we crossed a sacred threshold where the divine met the natural, and dharm found its path across the impossible. We saw Ram, patient and noble, offer his prayers to the ocean, seeking a way not through force, but through understanding. And when silence answered him, we witnessed for the first time the fire of his anguish, an anger not born of ego, but of sorrow, separation, and relentless injustice. It was the cry of a soul bound to dharm, pushed to the edge by delay and silence. We saw how even the might of Agnyastra was halted, not by fear, but by the gentle voice of Varun, who came not to resist, but to reveal the deeper laws of nature. In that meeting between Ram and the Lord of the Ocean, we glimpsed the balance of power and humility, of justice and mercy. We learned the story of Nal and Neel, blessed by childhood mischief and divine curse turned boon. And with their guidance, the bridge to Lanka was not just built with stones, but with faith, with Ram's name, and with a strength that defied the very laws of the world. We saw Ram worship Lord Shiv, acknowledging that even as the world bows to him, he bows to the one who dances time itself. We witnessed the ocean teeming with creatures, once enemies, now united in love, drawing to Ram as if by the pull of eternity itself. And then, the army stepped forward, right foot first, across the bridge of devotion, across the ocean of karma, toward a battle not just of arrows and swords, but of light and darkness. Join me in the next episode as Ram finally sets foot on the soil of Lanka. The bridge has been crossed, but the true test lies ahead. The gates of the golden city now stand between him and his beloved Sita. Behind those gates lies arrogance, illusion, and a kingdom built on fear. There, dharm will rise like a flame in the storm, unyielding, luminous, divine. And there, the fate of Sita, the soul of Lanka, and the future of the world itself will hang in delicate balance, waiting for the moment when truth, courage, and destiny collide. The war of ideals is about to begin, not just with weapons, but with words, vows, and the will of the eternal. Please share this podcast with your loved ones and let the timeless lessons of the Ramayana inspire your journey. Though the details of this ancient tale may vary across traditions, its essence reminds us of the enduring power of compassion, courage, and hope in the face of adversity. Until next time, may the light of dharm illuminate your path and fill your heart with peace.